Welcome, everyone, to In the Driver's Seat, the podcast that's all about how to improve the value of your company, helping business owner positioning their company for a successful exit wherever you are on the journey. My name is Simon Zryd. Together with Steven Kohnke, we co-host this podcast. We're both partnered at Denver Business Coach. We are certified exit planning advisor, certified value builders, and we're actually working with a team of 8 other advisors at Denver Business Coach, helping business owners build valuable and ultimately sellable companies. Our podcast that we launched earlier this year is all about introducing this conversation of building a valuable business early on in the process or the business owner's journey, so they're not faced with it at the very end. And inspiration behind this podcast were some realities that we're on a mission to change. And with that, I turn it over to Steven to share a little bit about the lay of the land for business owners.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. It's not looking good for the business owners, and that's what we're on a mission to change, right? So the stats that really inspired us to get going on this is 3 out of 4 businesses that go to sell, go to market, do not sell. That can be for a number of different reasons. And that stat combined with the one that says 70 to 90% of a business owner's wealth is their business. We believe that's a huge risk that business owners are taking by not preparing their business to sell for the long term. So we believe the earlier you start, the better. We have had a podcast on that one, and we're here to open up the conversation and help business owners prepare for the long term.
Yeah, perfect. And I find today's conversation, which is all about, when is the right time to sell? That's kind of the topic, and to the point, right? Like the value of a business and how it shows up on your balance sheet, on your net worth sheet. It's all hypothetical until it's realized gain, right? So there is a reality that business, like anything, is exposed to, and until you sell it, you don't have the money in your bank at this point. So there is a lot of talk and strategy and thinking going on into like, when is the right time to sell, right?
Yeah.
And when we were talking about this podcast, we talked a little bit about conversations we're having with business owners, all about like timing the market or trying to obviously sell when they get the highest possible value for it. So we'll dive into that a little bit. But one of the things we've learned just in these conversations over the last 10 years is, when trying to do so, there were many business owners that we've talked to back in 2015, 16 about, hey, is it time to sell? And oftentimes with the conversation that we got, or the feedback that we got, is like, no, we like finally turned things around from 2008, 2009, and we're now making up for the losses that we had during this time, and we really just want to keep running this and getting more good money out. And then the same people still own their business, having to go into the pandemic, and that just adds, depending on, either you sell at a low point or it adds another 10 years that you really weren't planning for in terms of getting your business to a good place. So in that, I want to turn it over to you, Steven, with, the premises of this conversation is like, why trying to time the market is not necessarily a good idea. Let's start there. What do we have to say about that?
So timing the market, whether it's selling a business, buying a business, selling a house, buying stock, whatever it is, it's a crapshoot. When it comes down to it, it's so unpredictable. You might think you recognize patterns, and then something changes, or there's very educated people that try to do this and fail at it as well. So I think for the average business owner, trying to predict when is the best time to sell your business in a particular industry, where it's going to be highly sought after, you can try, but our recommendation is think about other ways of when you want to sell your business. Always have it be prepared.
Mhm.
because it's from our position, it's just so hard to successfully time something. You can get lucky, but
And I think to that point though, because we will introduce a couple different
Mhm.
lenses or perspectives for how to look at it, but there is a point that if you get it right and you time it right, the the reward can be significant, right? Like there is, I think, Value Builder reported like up to a, two additional multiple points for
Mhm.
valuation. So if your average valuation is, let's say, a five times multiple, when you're at the peak of the market, you could be at a seven, versus if you're at the bottom of the market, you could be at a three. So that's a big gap in terms of valuation for a business, right? And so there is kind of like the desire or that allure to try to time the market. It's not just an arbitrary concept. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but but even then, you're, let's say, selling a business is also not something you can sell stocks within a day or within
Mhm.
a couple of days if you need to. Selling a business usually takes 6 months or more. So again, that even makes it more difficult to really time it. But if we're saying, okay, it's let's not play the game
Mhm.
of timing the market, then what is a better alternative to do that? I mean,
Mhm. I think we have four different examples, and I'll list them first, and then we can kind of go
mhm,
down. First one's all about your financial freedom. So um, being able to make sure that you have the money that you need to be doing whatever you need to be doing next. Next one is before an illness happens. So before you get sick or before you get tired of running your business, something like that. The third one is when there's something else you really want to be doing. So more on that positive push point. And then also fourth suggestion is when you're on a winning streak, and we can kind of break down a couple of those
mhm.
here.
So okay, great. Let's zoom into the first one. You said time and financial freedom as a
Mhm.
consideration.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I think that one's more about talking if you're not setting your business up to be sold, which is, the whole thing that we're here to be talking about, and your assets outside of your business don't allow you to live uh, the lifestyle that you've been accustomed to.
mm,
It might be time to take chips off it. Maybe not sell 100%, but maybe find some investors or find a partner that wants to buy in. And so you can start reducing some of your dependency on the business, take some of those chips off the table, and put that money away for more financial freedom too.
because I mean, it's kind of like you're investing in a stock market, right? The younger you are, the more aggressive your portfolio, and then as you're getting into the um, later years, you want to be more conservative because you don't have as much time anymore to recoup
Mhm.
the losses that you've made before you need to tap into that money, kind of to that point that we brought up at the beginning of the podcast. So, because fundamentally, the this the point that we make at the beginning of the podcast, which
Mhm.
is that a huge chunk of a business owner's net worth is tied up in the value of the business, is, if you think of it from a 30,000 foot view, is not a good investment strategy because you're not diversified. And I think that's the point that you're getting to is, you have to understand the risk that you have by having all of that value in your business as you're getting closer to needing that money to fund whatever is next or your retirement.
Right, exactly. It's about the diversification of whatever assets you have.
Yeah.
And so when you're getting to the point where your other assets just aren't there, it's might be time to be looking at different ways to diversify without completely leaving your business, still being able to maintain some of that control and some of that ownership, but maybe take those chips off and distribute
Yeah.
elsewhere to better
Different ways.
diversify.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, that makes sense. So again, that's just good good investment advice. And any investment advisor would tell you, don't try to time the market. Do what makes sense. So, okay, what's the second thing you talked about before you're sick and tired?
Or you're sick and tired, yes. And this one's the harder one, I think, for a lot of people to grasp, right? Of just mortality and everything like that. It's the unforeseen of getting sick, I think, is the it's never going to happen to me situation. Um, so, I think the point I want to make on this one is always being able to build your business to be sold of, but because if something does happen, then you're at a much better position to actually sell your business. But you also, we were talking before, you mentioned the negotiation position of, if you're in the hospital and you're trying to sell your business, it's not a very good negotiation position. So you might not get a
Okay. There's always this dynamic, right? Like the buyer wants to, get better terms, get a better price.
Mhm.
You're, and but also, I mean, this is really from firsthand experience
Mhm.
where you're even as a business owners, there's your personal health, right? And there's the things we can kind of anticipate to some extent, which is like you're getting older, and maybe you're like not as I don't know on top of things anymore, etc. But there's also two other things to mention. One is you're just one bad ski accident away from something happening, or one whatever car accident. And then secondly, it doesn't even have to be you personally as a business owner. It could be a family member. It could be extended family that whatever the ripple effects are in terms of needing to relocate or um, having to shuffle family responsibilities around, etc. Like I've seen several examples over the last few years where the owner wasn't ready. That was not in their plan, but an outside event triggered it where they had to be like, I need to make changes. I need to take care of my mom, or I need to move states, or and that's something that there's always some risk there, right? So you have to be um again, you have to be aware that at some point that's going to happen to you. But into our larger point, which is always being ready and building valuable companies, you don't know when it's going to happen. Anyway, yeah,
And I think what you're saying to build off of it, um, the likelihood of getting sick, for instance, grows as you get older.
yeah,
So before that, even, as you get older, before that it even comes into being a reality, consider selling at that point
yeah,
before that.
yeah. And I know several people. The examples that we gave of they went through 2008, 2009, or nine, and then rebounded, and then went into the pandemic. And you had to have a lot of grit to say, I'm going to do this again. So this sometimes it's not even sick. Yeah, it's like burnout. Like I just don't. I was ready to do it for another year or two, but I'm not ready to do it for another 5 or 10. Right,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. That's the tired part of
that's the
just
entire part.
I'm just done.
And you have to be top of game when you're selling a business. If you want to maximize your value, you can't be in a declining burnout state. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to number three, which
And
was
when there's something else you want to do.
that's right. Sometimes you're just like, okay, I've been there, done that. I've owned this company for 10, 20 years. I want to travel, or I need a new challenge. And you're anyway, I'll let you dive into that.
Well, I mean, you're explaining it just right. It's you've been there, done that in a way, and there's just something else you're interested in. I think a lot of more on the serial entrepreneurial side, people just like, okay, I built a construction business. Let's go try building a an accounting firm. I don't know. I don't know if those
Mhm.
two people would mix, but whatever. The point being, like, there could be something else you just want to build.
Yeah.
So being able to say, hey, all right, I've done this. I'll sell this off and use that to build something else. Or like you mentioned, if you like traveling for a year or whatever. Or you're just there's just something interesting that's grabbing your attention a little more than what was happening prior within the business, I think.
Yeah. And I do think we do see that a lot. We do have people, clients that have owned their companies for 20 plus years and they're ready to um, getting ready to sell the business. And then we do have the younger
Mhm.
generation that's like, okay, I want to run this for 5 years, seven max, and then I want to do the next thing, right? And and I was thinking about that in the context of we're we're encouraging people to think about themselves as architects, right?
Mhm.
Like building something. And like an architect, okay, after 10 years of building like single family homes, you're like, okay, I'm ready for something new.
Yeah.
Give me a new challenge. And yeah, so I can see that because again, the moment you're not all in with your business or your attention goes somewhere else,
Mhm.
it's just a matter of time before the quality of your business deteriorates to some extent.
Yeah.
And you don't want to let that happen and leave money on the table by waiting too long before you make the decision.
I
Yeah.
think along that line too, it's we've talked to many business owners that they're at this stage of I just don't want to build it anymore. I'm good with where it is. So they just don't have the energy or the investment that they want to be doing that business or whatever any longer. They don't want to grow it anymore. They don't want to hire more people. They don't want to do whatever's necessary to get to that next stage. They want to focus somewhere else. So I think that the energetic component also comes into play of wanting to do something else too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Let's move on to number four.
Number four, I think this is a tough one for, or would be a tough one for a lot of business owners to consider. It's when you're on a winning streak, when you have a lot of positive things going on.
Now it's fun. We're doing well. Things are happening. Finally, the hard work pays off. Why did I try to get out?
Having a good time, year over year growth, landing big clients. It a lot of fun, but it could be a really good time to consider selling because that's what people are going to want to see. They want to see a business going up. They don't want to see a business going down, which is when I think a lot of business owners start considering, all right, it might be time to sell.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many analogies, whether it's like, gambling and um
Walk away from the table. Don't keep going.
yeah, I mean, I see that sometimes with anyway, we just have like we like doing things when they're fun, right? But
Yeah.
to our point before, we don't know when things are going to turn. You never know when the market is at its top,
Mhm.
also. Um, and I think another point is you. One of the things we talk about with our owners is you want to leave room for growth for a business. Like
Yeah.
you actually get diminishing returns if you've capped out on the potential. Like if you have all the market share there is to get, or you have all the technology improvements, and there's very little room for improvement. It still can be a sellable business, but you're starting to get discounted because you're um, the potential for future growth might be diminished as well.
Right.
I think
Mhm.
that's true for maybe very for few businesses. Most of the time, you can always most companies have so little market share that there's always room for growth and yeah. But so okay, so now we've talked about four different lenses. I mean, in the end of the day, it's a serious decision, right? That we Exit Planning Institute and we bring to our clients mostly on a quarterly basis, like, are you still in it for growing, or do you want to, are you ready to go towards exit? And
Yeah.
that's um it's good. I guess my recommendation, and then I'll let you share as well, is to, it's not a question that you just want to ask yourself like once, like, is it time to sell? Like you have to get used to asking that question, and you have to explore your relationship with that. Um, and over time, you get deeper and deeper into the why you're really choosing to keep growing your company versus not. But it's a very big question if you only ask that once and you try to come up with the ultimate answer. Is kind of like my experience. It's like you just gotta start exploring that question on a continual basis. It's kind of one thing I've learned over the year.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring up. It's a discussion, right? I think and the more familiar that discussion is, the less scary it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if it's this, a lot of people say it's the biggest decision you'll ever make in your entire life. And it's like, if that's what you're faced with, it's like, whoa, okay, got a lot of things to consider. But if we're regularly talking about it on, like you mentioned, that quarterly basis, is it time to sell now, or do we want
And
to
you're
keep
just
growing?
committing for another 90 days
Yeah,
versus
that's
like all in or nothing, right? Yeah, yeah,
I think it makes that just a lot more approachable for a lot of business owners too,
yeah,
more familiar.
yeah. Yeah, I think, and that's coming back to our core purpose of this podcast, is to bring this conversation front and center into the now, even though you're not necessarily thinking about it. Like the reason we're introducing this conversation is because a lot of people are not having it,
Right.
and making it just as normal as, you know, setting an annual budget for your family or whatever it is, like have it be more accessible, I guess. Um, yeah,
Which marketing avenue are you going to try next? Yeah.
yeah. Okay, excellent. I thought those were some really good perspective. So to sum it up, my takeaway would be our goal with this podcast was to introduce alternative perspectives on why it's a good reason to potentially sell your business, other than one that's trying to time your market ultimately,
Mhm.
because that's a what we think a high risk approach to when is the right time to sell ultimately. Um,
Good.
Anything else?
I think that summarizes it great. I like it.
Okay, good. Thank you to our listeners. Always nice to be with you. And till next week.
All right. Talk soon.